Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. We get a recap of how there are nimbuses who appeared alongside the dungeons and monsters, and with them came those who were bestowed gifts, players. Many people believe the nimbuses to be either gods who gave people the power to fight monsters, or catastrophes who seek to destroy the world. Some people even began to question if this was all just a game to the nimbuses. Amongst the 6 nimbuses, the most well-known are the listener of all creation, who is focused on spirits; the caretaker of a fountain, who is focused on magic; the undying fighter, who is focused on strength and tenacity; the silent hunter, who is focused on agility. These are the basic 4 that people generally get, but there are 2 that only select a few chosen. The executioner of the holy light, who grants powerful offense and defense; and the emissary of the underworld, who grants the authority over dark magic, deadly poison, and curses. And in order to hunt down Sejin. This is who Woojin got as his nimbus. A lot of preparation and effort, he finally succeeded in his revenge of killing the hero. And now the only thing left for him to do is to put an end to this game. It takes us to Sekon's office, and on the news we see that Shin Hai has resigned as CEO of the Hansung Group. And he hopes that Ji-So is doing okay, but decides she can take care of herself. Then it takes us to the Memorial Park, where we see Shin Hai and Ji-So. Shin Hai is crying, while looking at a picture of Jin-So. Ji-So looks deep in thought, as we get a flashback of Shin Hai dropping to her knees apologizing to her. She's crying, saying it's all her fault, and that she is truly sorry. She even grabs onto Ji-So, but she doesn't say anything. Then the flashback ends, with her saying that she's been thinking about whether or not she can forgive her. She doesn't think she can, since it just seems impossible, at least for now. Shin Hai looks up a little hopeful, and Ji-So tells her to prove how sorry she is with her actions, and hands her a card. We learn it's a card for Pandora, which is a company that both of their fathers created in order to prepare for what comes after the game ends. Ji-So tells her that if she has people she cares about, then they can watch over their futures together. As she's explaining this, we see an old picture of them that's been ripped in half, taped together. She says that maybe one day they can get things to go back to how they were in the old days. Shin Hai keeps crying, and Ji-So walks away telling her to think about it, and give her a call. Shin Hai stands there holding the picture, feeling extremely guilty about how she's acted until now. We see on the news that the heroes are gathering for the final dungeon. And that heroes from all over the world have gathered today at the gate, in honor of Sejin, who passed away on the 8th floor. The gate this time is incomparably larger than any of the previous gates. We see Georg smirking while someone's knee is shaking. And of course it's Jinna who gets teased for being nervous. Even Woojin says he looks hella nervous, but he says it's natural since he is too. And he tries to stop his hand from trembling. Since even though he's already died here, he feels nervous about it. He thinks of the giant door from his previous life, and smiles in wonder of what could be behind it. He opens the door, and they all get out of their limousine, and begin walking towards the gate. Francois waves at him, Jordan and them are there, even Youngwon and Shakira. Woojin asks everyone if they are ready. This is where the epilogue truly begins. As they enter the final floor, Jinna looks around and says that what Woojin said was true. Back inside the A+8 floor dungeon, after they defeated the boss and Jinna was gassed out. He barks about how he's going to die. Woojin compliments him. He awkwardly takes the compliment, telling Woojin he did well too. Then says since this floor is this hard, he wonders how the last floor will be, so he asks Woojin if he knows anything about it. To which he says not much. Jinna says that's weird since he thought he'd know something. Woojin says there will be a cavern that leads to a huge door, but he's unsure what is behind it. Jinna asks him what he's talking about. He's a little slow. Woojin smirks saying it's just his guess, then walks away. Jinna barks saying that he surely knows something. The flashback ends, and Woojin is looking around. He says so far it's the same as it was before. Woojin gathers everyone around for the briefing. He goes to tell them what to do for the first floor. But hears an error sound and sees there is a system error. It says the clear condition for the first floor has been forcefully accomplished. Woojin is surprised, and this continues with every single floor all the way up to till even the 8th floor has been forcefully cleared. The other players are sweating nervously, as they all receive the error too. Another message appears, saying the entry condition for the 9th floor has been met. Youngwon wonders what's going on, so does Georg. Jinna then asks Woojin what's going on, and he says he has no clue. Jinna is taken aback that even he doesn't know. A distortion occurs, as a white gate appears, and Woojin says they should just head to the final room. They approach the door, and Woojin says he's never heard of a system error before, and he wonders what is behind the door. Jinna puts his hand on his shoulder, and asks if he's nervous. He's sweating bullets and says that Woojin looks like he is too. And that he'll keep him safe, while shaking. Woojin smirks, then says it's time for them all to finally put an end to this game. He puts his hand on the door, pushing it open. A window appears saying starting the final battle. Inside is a giant cathedral-esque room. Jinna points out that he cannot see anything. Georg agrees with him. And plot convenience ensues, as torches along the wall begin to light up, and further into the room is illuminated. We see corpses all over the place. As Yongwan is standing in front of one, he gets a chill down his spine. Then turns around to see the end of the room is lit up now, with a throne. And someone sitting atop it. The man says that they certainly took their time. Woojin gives the classic WWE stare down. Another status window appears saying ? is making his appearance. The rest wonder what is going on. Yongwan readies his swords and sweats nervously, wondering who this guy is. Then his swords break as a powerful shockwave flies at him. The shockwave is sent across the entirety of the room. Woojin narrowly avoids getting caught in it, only to see the devastation it's left behind. Yongwan, who was sent flying, drops to his knees. Jinna seems like he got rocked. Even Francois is on his knees. The man says he expected one hit to be enough to make them turn into mist. Woojin begins to step forward, and asks the man what he is. Then summons the boys, which makes the man laugh. He snaps his fingers, creating a small ball of lightning. Woojin notices this behind him, then everyone else's face looks full of fear. We finally learn it's due to how massive the ball has grown. The man smiles, then makes it crash into them all. We see the Aegis shield was used to block the attack, and Woojin says everyone is gone while coughing up blood. He drops to his knees, and we don't see anyone else in the room. The man tells Woojin he's nothing more than a bug pretending to be something greater, and he's ruined his run. So he doesn't deserve to die so easily. Then he says, "Don't you agree, Isaac?" "No, Kim Woojin." Which surprises him. He then asks the man again what he is. The man says he doesn't need to answer an insect, and he hopes he'll be more entertaining next time. The man gestures his finger downward, as Woojin wonders what next time meant. He gets slammed into the floor. As the pressure begins to crush him, he realizes this is how he dies, and the final thing he sees is the man laughing at him. As he explodes, we see a window appear, saying that Woojin has died. Starting the game, Woojin opens his eyes again, surprised he's standing, then looks around to see that he's still in the throne room. The man asks how it feels to be alive again, and says he should be familiar with this, since he's experienced it before already. Woojin says turning back time rings a bell. He begins to piece together how the man can wipe out the strongest players, and along with the system errors, along with the blatant hostility, he knows who the man is now. Woojin smirks, saying he's far from what he imagined a Nimbus to be like, then asks if he's troubled that Sejin died. He is the executioner of the Holy Light. The executioner is clearly pissed, saying that he hasn't troubled him, but he is angry, of course. So he is taking his frustration out on him. Woojin begins to float into the air, and the man moves his finger sideways. Woojin begins to bound all around the room like a bouncy ball, finally crashing into the floor, spitting up blood. The executioner says crushing humans is just like a game to the nimbuses. It jumps to a bit later and we see Woojin shakily standing, and he wonders how many times it has been. He's died quite a few times now, being stabbed, crushed into the floor, having his neck broken and so on. He looks at the executioner, saying he had no idea a Nimbus would do this, but Woojin realizes what it could mean. We don't get to know yet, and the executioner says there's something clearly on Woojin's mind. And he says that he hopes that Woojin doesn't think the other players, or his bone soldiers, will be any form of help to him. He begins to release an aura and crushing Woojin. He tells him that the only way he's getting out of this is if he begs for it. He tells Woojin to bow his head, and increases the pressure even further. Woojin's head crashes into the floor, to be forcefully made to bow. Woojin looks up at the executioner, who says he needs to beg for his life. Woojin noticed that his figure blurred for a moment, so maybe this isn't his main body. Woojin smirks, saying he just needs to taunt him more. The executioner looks pissed, asking if he is laughing, saying he's lost his mind. Woojin tells him he just finds it hilarious that an all-powerful being is throwing a fit, since he cannot control him, and he finds it quite human-like. The executioner gets up, saying if this is what he wants. Then he summons two giant swords made of light, saying that begging won't be enough, and that Woojin will suffer an infinite loop of deaths for eternity. Woojin gets sent flying into the air, and of course gets clapped. His subconscious begins to float, then he opens his eyes to see the notification he's died, along with a system error. Then the window breaks apart, a bright light appears as some form of doorway is opened. It's cosmos-looking environment, a white orb begins to form in the middle as it takes shape into a figure. It is the emissary of death, who stands before Woojin. It looks down at him, and he says it took longer than he thought. The emissary asks if he's anticipated this, and compliments him for being quite relaxed. Woojin says he didn't believe his nimbus would stay still, when the executioner was going on a rampage. The emissary says that's fascinating. Woojin then asks what they can do for him. They raise their hand, a purple orb appears then goes to Woojin's heart. The emissary says that this is all that can be done. Woojin smiles, saying this is more than enough and has a Dragon Ball Z aura. The emissary says that Woojin might have a lot of questions, but he needs to deal with the issue first. Woojin says bet. Back in the executioner's room, he calls Woojin trash, saying his taunts are useless here. Then snaps his finger, but is taken aback that his power is not activating. He realizes he is running out of strength, and angrily hits the throne. The fog clears, to reveal a purple aura around Woojin. And he watches Woojin stand up and realizes that the emissary has gotten involved. Woojin asks if he's surprised, but this makes the EXE smile and laugh for a bit, until he goes back to being pissed off. Saying a little help won't change anything, it will not make a difference. Woojin says they'll see about that. He summons a sword of his own to fight. The EXE launches an attack at him. As it gets closer, Woojin's sword collides with it. It splits the attack in half, making it split. The EXE looks surprised. Woojin says that's not too bad. The EXE grits his teeth, then hops down. He begins to dash straight toward Woojin. They trade blows with one another. This continues as they continuously parry one another. EXE's shoulder starts to fade out. Woojin spots this and says he's sure of it now, and that the cycle is getting shorter, whatever that is. EXE prepares more attacks, and asks if this is all he can do. Then launches the attacks again, saying that he's dead. Woojin goes to dodge the attack, but we're unsure if he did as the attacks creates a smokescreen. EXE stands before it and wonders how he's lost so much of his power already. Woojin says he knew it. That he's overexerting himself. EXE goes to turn around but it's too late. As Woojin's attack goes through, slicing EXE across the chest. The wound begins to shine brightly, and EXE says oh shit. He grabs onto the wound, forcefully closing it up. Woojin can tell from his face, and the fact energy is leaking from the wound. Along with how his body keeps fading out. Woojin smirks, saying there's clearly a limit to his body's power and he's probably reached it. EXE sweats nervously, of course Woojin spots this too. Then says that not even a nimbus can manipulate time and space, without there being consequences and a limit to the power that can be used. Then, thanks him for wasting it already. A giant gate appears behind EXE, it's the Gate of the Dead. It opens and chains fly out of it towards EXE, they begin to wrap around him. And he grunts as he gets turned into a chain cocoon. Woojin says he just needs to survive until he's out of power. EXE screams and light energy creates holes in the cocoon. It gets brighter, then explodes. Woojin sees he's gotten out. EXE says he'll give him credit for being keen. And says he didn't realize Detective Conan was here, but he's hella pissed about his restrictions. But he had no option but to take this form. He wanted to enjoy this a bit longer. But it's too late, so he'll finish it before his power runs out. Woojin says his presence feels weaker. EXE dashes at Woojin, piercing him in the chest before he could react. As he's on the floor, EXE says he's lucky. Since he was aiming for his heart, Woojin looks up at him. Then a status window appears. It says that the undying fighter is pleased to meet him, and grants him authority. This is the one he had in his past life. Woojin grabs the light piercing his chest, then pulls it out. EXE is shocked, asking why he can feel another aura. Woojin smirks, saying that it looks like they are siding with him. He pulls the light spear, causing EXE to fly at him. And greets him with a solid right, knocking him back in the other direction. Woojin says they must really have it out for him. EXE asks what he means. The Silent Hunter then grants Woojin an authority as well. He begins to form a dagger from the authority, and says they really hate EXE. This pisses him off, then Woojin disappears for an instant, but EXE notices him directly overhead preparing an attack. EXE tries to block it, but Woojin cuts through it and slices him. The listener of all creation sees this as a chance, and gives Woojin authority too. Woojin says it's good that they are on his side, then stretches his hand outward, summoning giant vines from the floor. They wrap around the EXE, and he asks why they are all betraying him. Then breaks out of the vines, and prepares another weapon made of light. The caretaker Nimbus also hates EXE, so he of course grants Woojin some authority too. Woojin tells EXE to get ready. EXE asks what he means, then notices that a circle has appeared below him. But it's too late, as it explodes, creating a massive pillar of fire from the floor. After a bit, and the smoke fades out, EXE is seen on his knees. Woojin calls out to him, but doesn't get a response. Woojin grabs onto his hair, and lifts his head, saying he needs to pull himself together. Woojin says no choice, then cuts EXE across the chest again. This causes him to scream, so Woojin says he can't believe he's struggling so much already. Woojin calls him pathetic, then asks how it feels to be so close to death. But says it's obviously his first time. EXE tells him to wait, asking to be spared. He says he'll definitely die, so please just show mercy this one time. Woojin clearly gets angry. EXE continues pleading, saying he'll never step foot here again. Woojin is speechless, then grits his teeth, saying this isn't fun. Woojin calls out to the nimbuses, asking what their plans are. A rift appears in the room, then opens directly by Woojin. He turns around to see the nimbuses appear. One of them says to leave EXE to him, and tells Woojin it's been a while. Woojin recognizes him as the undying fighter, who laughs, saying he knew he'd be recognized. Then apologizes for his past life, saying at least he got to accomplish his goals in this one. And he had fun watching him. Woojin looks pleased, and says he helped him. The undying fighter laughs again, saying he never changes, and that they'll dispose of EXE. And that he's not the only one who has a grudge against him, and since EXE's actions were ridiculous, he expects the punishment to be equally as harsh. Woojin says that's alright with him, and they can do as they wish. Undi points behind him, saying she'll tell him the rest of the story. The woman begins to take her hood off, saying it's time for them to finally talk. We see it's the emissary of death. She says he probably has a lot of questions, then asks where to start. Undai says the rest are going to take their leave, and Emmy says that they'll start from when he got killed by Sejin, and she pulls it up in 4K. She says that the world fell into Sejin's hands. He had a monopoly on everything, even people. He acted like a king, or rather a god. They weren't thrilled with his behavior, except for EXE, who was. After some discussion, they decided on only 2 courses of action: to restart the game and to choose a player to go up against Sejin. To see the actual ending to the game. Woojin asks why he was chosen. Emmy smirks. She says the player who hated Sejin the most, and was skilled enough to see the ending, was none other than Sejin. She says it was pretty tough back then, and while they are nimbuses rewinding time, preserving a human's memory isn't easy. Woojin asks how EXE did it continuously then. She says he was only controlling time and space inside the dungeon. Since it had no effect on the outside world, the scale was different. But it was still unprecedented that a nimbus had done this to a player. But, thanks to that, it created a chance for the rest to help Woojin. But even if this didn't happen, they would have done something, and that Woojin was expecting it, right? He says he had a hunch, then asks what'll happen to EXE. Emmy says that they'll take his remaining power, and remove his title as a nimbus. She snaps her fingers, and Woojin looks down to see a hole has formed. She says that they'll leave EXE at the bottom of this pit, then asks Woojin what he thinks about it. He says good, then asks what the plan is now that the game is over. She says they've not thought about it yet, and that things should just move forward as usual. And it'll be like it was before they interfered. Woojin says they are just determined to inconvenience them. Emmy laughs at the joke, saying that's just how they are. But it's nothing to worry over, as humans always find answers. She then asks if he's disappointed he'll soon lose his abilities. He thinks about it. Then tells her no, since he's achieved his goal, and he's gained some trustworthy allies, so he won't be disappointed. Emmy smiles, saying that sounds like Woojin. She says she should get going, then asks if he has anything else to say. He thanks her for everything, and she's surprised. He says even though they claim it's all been for their entertainment, but if they didn't help it would have been way too hard. And he has nothing else to say, so if she's done then she can go. She smirks, and says alright. A bright purple light appears from her, and she smiles, saying this is her final present. The entire room turns purple, and Woojin sees floating orbs after the bright light fades out. All of the dead people on the ground have a faint purple light, and then some of the players begin to stand up. Woojin is surprised, Youngwon and Shakira are curious too. Jinna and Georg begin to run at Woojin, and then ask if he's alright. And where EXE is, then a notification appears Jinna is pogging out of his gourd. It appears in front of every single other player who participated. Youngwon and Shakira fall to the floor, and we see that it says the game has ended. Youngwon is surprised, then looks over at Woojin and says there is no way that Woojin beat EXE. Everyone's item effects disappear, and all items are unequipped. Woojin begins to glow, and his Isaac disguise fades out. Youngwon is pissed, and scared that Isaac is Woojin. As all the players begin to yap around the room, Jinna asks what the hell is going on and calls out to Woojin, who is walking to Francois. Woojin says he has a favor to ask. We don't get to hear it, but Francois agrees to it. Outside the portal the crowd can see they've cleared it, and they start snapping pics and see Francois, but wonder where Isaac is. Francois grabs a microphone, saying it's been a long journey. After much sacrifice they killed the final boss, and put an end to the game. However, Isaac and Spasiba were killed. The crowd is stunned. Francois says that in his final breath Isaac said, "When the game ends the world will be in chaos, and people will need to prepare." He thought of the perfect person to lead them all, then Second takes the mic and introduces himself as the president of the Pandora Company. He says the company was made to prepare for the chaos when the game ended. And inheriting the legacy of Isaac, along with Jin So and Yongho, they want to contribute to maintaining world peace. Woojin smirks, and walks away from the speech, and then it jumps to 6 months later. At the Pandora main branch, we see a man sweating bullets, and a woman telling him that his application for player support funds has been confirmed. And they'll be deposited to his account later today. He starts crying out of joy, saying that since his powers disappeared he's had a hard time supporting himself. And boasts thanking her. She says that Pandora and many other people like him are working hard. So stay strong and protect their daily life. Another man beside them yells, asking if he isn't eligible. He asks if he's being mocked for being unemployed. He says he heard he could get support funds for coming here, and that he'd be compensated with money if he handed over items. The man behind the counter says that isn't it, and that the man has a criminal record. The man tells him to shut up and hand him his money. A familiar voice tells the man that there's a lot of people here, so they can take it elsewhere. The man turns around asking who he is, then goes to slap Jinna. But of course he gets put into the dirt. Porkchop asks if he's allowed to do this to a customer. Jinna says it'd be better if they talked it out. Afterwards Jinna heads to the CEO's office, and we see Ji So sitting behind a desk. He asks if she's eating, and sees all the paperwork she has to do, and says to take it easy. She says it's time for her shift, and asks if everything was okay at the support window. Jinna says he got rid of a rude customer, and says who else would protect the world other than him. Then starts to describe Porkchop to her, and says even if he lost his abilities he still has his sensations. Then laughs saying he misses dungeons. She tells him he's making a fuss, and they continue their banter. She asks if she needs to tell that person. Jinna says hell no, then asks where that bastard is. She says he's doing his best in a much tougher place than Jinna is. Jinna says that he's doing his best. Then it cuts to some construction site. We see a man flying into the wall, and Georg standing beside a lot of knocked out dudes. Then he says that he's done over here, and opens a crate to find a lot of items. He tells Woojin this, and says that anyone who buys or sells items that have lost their ability are idiots. And he's already called the disposal team, and asks if it's time to go. Woojin says yeah, it's time to go back. Back at Pandora we see Second telling everyone good work on their investigation. He points out how the people they are fighting had more items. He wonders where they keep getting this stuff. Jinna says there are rumors spreading that some items are still effective. Ji So says some organizations are holding on to items to collect compensation from Pandora. Second says it's troublesome, and he already has a lot on his plate. It's getting hard to keep up with the company's expenses since it's so big. Woojin asks him how much money he needs. Second says the more the better. Woojin jumps out of his chair saying he'll get it for him. It cuts to a familiar office, and we see pictures of Yongwon. He's there too. His secretary is trying to stop someone from entering. Yongwon sees the door open and there is Woojin. Yongwon sweats nervously, asking why he's here. His secretary apologizes, saying they just barged in, but he tells her it's okay. Yongwon starts clenching his cheeks wondering what they need. Woojin tells him he just needs some money. Yongwon asks why he's asking for money when coming in so abruptly. Woojin grabs a picture off the shelf, explaining how the Phoenix Foundation, using one of the core members for the 9th-floor dungeon clear, has a lot of organizations trying to help. So he wonders how it would be if people learn that one of the heroes is fulfilling his own desire by pocketing funds and tampering with the books. Yongwon angrily shouts, asking what kind of bullshit is he spewing without proof. Woojin smirks, asking what'll he do if he does. Yongwon wonders what's the meaning of all this, and that this is most likely just a bluff. He says that it's just nonsense, and he knows that Woojin is amazing, but now he's a normal person without his powers. He hits a button. Then yells, asking if he should be intimidated because Woojin brought some scum with him. The scum is offended, and tons of security runs into the room surrounding the boys. Woojin says he never changes. Yongwon yells for the security to beat them up. Then instantly it jumps to his face and looks super happy. And he's on his knees while his security is asleep. Georg and Jinna found Yongwon's vault under his chair, and Jinna tells Woojin he found the ledger. Woojin says well done, then tells him to take the vault, and pictures of all the documents. Yongwon is happy to share his money, and we see on the news that he's generously donated to Pandora. Woojin is happy about reading the news, then Georg tells him the location for the next mission is set. Woojin says things look like they'll get busy, but he has something to do, so he'll see him at the departure point. It jumps to Jinna talking at a podium, then he exits to see Woojin. He asks what's with the sudden visit, and Woojin asks if he's done, and they should go eat. Jinna says he's just going to make him pay for everything like last time. Woojin says forget it, but Jinna says he'll go. In the crowd of the auditorium, we see Michelle and them. He's glad they are doing well, then heads out. At a restaurant, Jinna asks if Woojin is overdoing himself. He says no, and that price doesn't matter, so eat up. After a bit of Jinna pigging out, Woojin stands up saying he needs to make a quick call. Jinna continues to eat, then realizes he's fallen for it again. So he jumps up, and runs to the cashier asking if an angry-looking man walked out. The man says yes, but he left him a note. On the note we see Woojin saying it's an emergency, but he bought all of the meat in the store today, so enjoy piggy. Back at Pandora, we see Ji-So working late at night, and someone opens the door and she asks who it is. We see Shinhai saying that it's been a while, asking if he's doing well. She apologizes for turning up unannounced, and she's thankful for Ji-Su's offer, but she is feeling down because she knows it'll never be enough to redeem herself. Ji-So tells her that it's tough for anyone to admit they were wrong, and correct it. But that she's taken the first step, so she'll help her. It doesn't matter how long it takes, if she helps people and is genuine, then her feelings will reach others, like they have done to her. She grabs onto her hands. Shinhai looks hopeful, then begins to cry and apologizes again. It skips to later and we see Second in his office. His door opens and Ji-So says she has someone to introduce him to. He's surprised to see that it's Shinhai, and she introduces herself to him. Second awkwardly says yeah, then Ji-So hands her documents to sign. He says it looks like she's wrapped things up well, but she ignores him, saying to check and approve the documents. He tells her to wait, but she just walks out. He says she's as cold as ever, then he looks down in fear and yells, asking for Jinna, who eventually makes his way into the room, only to be smacked in the face by a folder. Second asks if he's actually an ogre, asking how he can eat so much. Piggy asks why he's being scolded, since working makes people hungry. Second asks if he truly lost his skills, saying he's eating more and more. Jinna says he'll try to have how much he eats. Second says he needs to fourth it, and tells him to get out. Second receives a phone call, and picks it up. Francois says he's got a lot of free time now, and we learn that France has stabilized a lot, thanks to the manpower and funds Pandora sent. And that they've recovered some items they'll be sending to Pandora, and thanks to Woojin's info it was smooth sailing. Second says that's how it goes, then says it's a little strange. Francois asks what he means. Second says the information Woojin is providing is too accurate. Like he's been observing the sites all this time. Francois says that's a good thing then. Second says he's not worried since Woojin is a good guy, but it's like he's hiding something. Francois says it sounds like he's getting old, worrying about nothing. And to let Woojin take care of the rest. And they should go out to eat. Second says only if Francois pays. He agrees, calling him a cheapskate. Second hangs up, and it cuts maybe for the final time to a helicopter flying over the woods. Georg asks Woojin what these guys did for them to be put here. Woojin says they are trafficking items, kidnapping people and performing illegal experiments too. They are nasty bastards who will be wiped out this time. We see them hiding outside of a warehouse. Woojin tells Georg to cover him, Woojin splits left and begins to run while Georg goes crazy spraying his gun. The bad guys panic and some of them get hit, but the ones who made it to cover begin to retaliate back at Georg. One of them notices, and turns around and we hear his bones crunch. Then see that Woojin has taken care of them all. He opens the warehouse doors, and is repulsed, to see people in cages, bodies on the floor, people being chained up too. Woojin drops his gun saying he won't let these guys die easily. And he readies his knife, then dashes in swiftly slicing the vital points of the enemies he passed by, so they'll bleed out. They drop to the floor, and he looks around and grabs one of them by the collar. Georg enters, saying that's a lot of people. Then radios in that they are done here, so they need the cleanup crew. But maybe medical assistance is more urgent. He looks over to see a black aura from Woojin. We viewers know he's reading his memories. Woojin says they will be busy in the future, and he's found their headquarters. He asks if he's ready. Georg says yes, and Woojin turns around to reveal that he truly does have his abilities still. Georg notices this, and is glad he decided to follow Woojin. And now they'll go wipe out the headquarters. This is truly the ending to the manhwa. I'm glad there were side stories made as the original ending felt lackluster. But this made it better. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you've watched till the end, comment, cat, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this. Leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.